first rays of the morning sun slipped gently through the white curtains of a beautiful brick house on a quiet street in Boston. Outside, birds sang from the maple trees, while a cool breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers blooming in the garden. Inside the house, everything felt warm, peaceful, alive. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee drifted through the kitchen as soft jazz music played quietly in the background. Aima stood near the window, wearing an oversized cream-colored sweater with light blue jeans. Her long chestnut brown hair rested over her shoulders, glowing under the golden sunlight. She gently watered the small plants lined along the windowsill, smiling as tiny drops of water sparkled like diamonds. Behind her, someone quietly walked into the kitchen. Without saying a word, Peter wrapped his arms around her waist. Aima smiled before even turning around. "I knew it was you," she whispered. Peter rested his chin on her shoulder. "You always know." She laughed softly. "Because no one else steals my morning hugs." Peter chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." She turned around to face him. Peter looked exactly the way he always did every morning, slightly messy dark brown hair, sleepy blue eyes, and the same gentle smile that had made Aima fall in love with him years ago. "You forgot something," Aima said. Peter frowned dramatically. "My coffee?" She shook her head. "My good morning kiss." Peter placed one hand over his heart. "How could I make such a terrible mistake?" Aima giggled. "I was wondering the same thing." Peter leaned closer and kissed her forehead first. Then her nose, then finally her lips. "There," he smiled. "Much better." Their mornings always began this way, not because life was perfect, but because they had promised each other that no matter how busy life became, they would never stop treating each other like best friends. Peter picked up 2 mugs of coffee. "Breakfast on the balcony? Only if you're making pancakes." Peter sighed dramatically. "You married me for my pancakes, didn't you?" "Maybe, only maybe." Aima smiled mischievously. 80% pancakes. "And the other 20? She looked into his eyes. "You." Peter laughed so loudly that even the neighbor's dog barked outside. An hour later, they sat together on their small wooden balcony overlooking the peaceful neighborhood. The table held pancakes topped with strawberries, maple syrup, and 2 steaming cups of coffee. Peter watched Aima as she carefully cut her pancakes into tiny squares. "You still do that," he said. "What?" "You cut every pancake into perfect little pieces." "So? You've done it since our first date." Alma looked surprised. "You remember that?" Peter smiled. "I remember everything about you." She raised an eyebrow. "Oh, really?" "Absolutely. What color was my dress on our first date?" Peter answered immediately. "Light blue." "What dessert did I order?" "Chocolate lava cake." "What song was playing when we left the restaurant?" Peter pretended to think. "Perfect," by Ed Sheeran. Aima's eyes widened. "You seriously remember all of that?" Peter shrugged. "When something is important, you don't forget it." Aima reached across the table and gently held his hand. For a few silent moments, neither of them spoke. Sometimes love didn't need words. Sometimes silence said everything. Around 9 o'clock, Peter grabbed his car keys. "I should head to the office." Aima walked him to the front door as she always did. Before opening it, Peter suddenly stopped. "What?" "I forgot something again." She crossed her arms. "This is becoming a habit." "My goodbye kiss." Aima smiled. "You're impossible. And yet, you married me." She laughed and kissed him softly. Peter stepped outside but turned around once more. "I love you. I love you more." "Impossible. We'll argue about that tonight. It's a date." Peter waved before driving away. Aima stood at the doorway until his car disappeared around the corner. Only then did she go back inside. Every single morning, every single goodbye, she watched him leave until she couldn't see him anymore. She never knew why. She simply did. Peter worked as one of Boston's most respected architects, His colleagues admired his creativity. His clients trusted him. But everyone at the office knew one thing. Peter talked about his wife. A lot. At lunch, his coworker Ryan rolled his eyes as Peter unlocked his phone. "Let me guess." Peter smiled. "What? You're going to show us another picture of Aima?" Peter looked offended. "This one is new." Ryan laughed. "Peter, you've shown us at least 300 photos." Correction, Peter swiped proudly. 342. Everyone burst into laughter. Ryan shook his head. "I've never seen someone this obsessed with their wife." Peter smiled without embarrassment. "I hope I'm still obsessed with her when we're 80. Ryan looked at him for a moment. "You really love her, don't you?" Peter answered without hesitation. "More than anything." Meanwhile, across town, Aima finished teaching her morning classes at the elementary school where she worked. Children surrounded her before she could even leave. "Miss Aima, can you read us one more story?" She looked at the clock. "I only have 5 minutes." The children cheered excitedly. She sat on the colorful reading carpet and opened a fairy tale book. As she read, every child listened with sparkling eyes. One little girl suddenly raised her hand. "Miss Aima? Yes? Our princess is real?" The classroom became quiet. Aima smiled warmly. "I think they are." "Really?" "Yes. What do they look like?" Aima gently closed the book. "A real princess isn't someone who wears a crown." The children listened carefully. "A real princess is someone who is kind, honest, brave, and makes people feel loved." The little girl smiled. "Like you." Aima's heart melted. She hugged the child gently. "No," she whispered with a smile. "Like all of you can become one day." That evening, Peter returned home carrying a small paper bag behind his back. Aima opened the door. "You're late." "I know. Should I be worried?" Peter grinned. "No." He revealed the paper bag. Her eyes lit up. "Cheesecake? Your favorite. You remembered?" "I remember everything." She laughed. "I think you've said that twice today. I'll say it for the rest of my life." They spent the evening cooking dinner together, laughing whenever one of them made a mistake. Peter accidentally dropped flour on the kitchen floor. Aima tried to clean it. Instead, Peter playfully dabbed a little flour on the tip of her nose. She gasped, "Oh, you're in trouble." Seconds later, flour filled the air. Both of them laughed so hard they could barely stand. By the time dinner was ready, the kitchen looked like a bakery had exploded. Neither of them cared, because those imperfect little moments became the memories they treasured most. Later that night, after dinner, they sat together on the living room sofa beneath a warm blanket. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Peter wrapped one arm around Aima while she rested her head against his shoulder. The television played quietly in the background, but neither of them was really watching it. Peter broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "If life ever became difficult, would you still choose me?" Aima lifted her head and looked into his eyes. "There isn't a version of my life where I don't choose you." Peter smiled. "And if everything changed?" She gently placed her hand over his. "Then we'd face every change together." Peter kissed her forehead. "I promise, no matter what happens, I'll never let go of your hand." Aima smiled. "I know." Outside, the rain continued to fall. Neither of them realized that life was quietly preparing a test that would challenge every promise they had ever made. And somewhere far away, an envelope with Peter's name written across the front was already making its way toward their home. It carried a truth that would change their lives forever. The next morning began just like every other day. Golden sunlight streamed through the bedroom window, painting soft patterns across the white walls. The alarm clock rang at exactly 6:30 a.m. But before it could ring a second time, Peter reached over and switched it off. He turned toward Aima, who was still asleep. A few strands of her chestnut brown hair rested across her face. She looked peaceful, completely unaware that Peter was watching her with the same admiration he had on the day they first met. He smiled to himself. How did I get so lucky? He thought. Carefully, so he wouldn't wake her, Peter brushed the loose strands of hair away from her face and kissed her forehead. "Good morning, Mrs. Brooks," he whispered. Without opening her eyes, Ima smiled. "You know," she murmured sleepily, "I can hear you." Peter laughed softly. "I knew you weren't really asleep." She slowly opened her hazel eyes. "You talk too much. And yet, I still married you. You'll never stop saying that, will you?" "Never," they both laughed. It was another ordinary morning, or at least it seemed ordinary. After breakfast, Peter left for work, promising he'd be home early. "I'll finish the new building design today," he said while putting on his coat. "That means dinner together?" Peter nodded. 7 o'clock. "No excuses, no excuses." Ima pointed at him playfully. "You said that last week, and I kept my promise. You were only 20 minutes late. That's early by architect standards." She laughed and kissed him goodbye. "I'll see you tonight. I love you. I love you more." Peter drove away. Ima stood at the doorway until his car disappeared from sight. Then she closed the door with a peaceful smile. She had no idea, within the next hour, everything would begin to change. Around 10 in the morning, the sound of the doorbell echoed through the house. Ding, dong, Ima walked to the front door. Outside stood an elderly mail carrier with a small bundle of letters. "Good morning." "Good morning," Ima replied warmly. "You've got the usual bills?" He paused. "And one registered letter." "A registered letter?" "Yes." She signed the receipt and accepted the envelope. The mail carrier smiled politely before walking back to his van. Ima looked down at the envelope. It was plain white. No company logo. No return address. Only one name was written neatly across the front. "Mr. Peter Brooks," she frowned. "That's strange. Peter rarely received personal letters." Curious, she turned it over. It had already been opened slightly during delivery. A folded document was visible inside. For a brief moment, she hesitated. "I shouldn't open it," but something about the envelope felt unusual. After a few seconds, she carefully unfolded the paper. The moment her eyes reached the first line, the color drained from her face. She stopped breathing. No, her hands began to tremble. She read it again, then a third time. Tears slowly gathered in her eyes. This can't be right. The paper slipped from her fingers and fell onto the wooden floor. For several long seconds, the house was completely silent. Only the ticking clock on the wall could be heard. Meanwhile, Peter was presenting his newest architectural design to an important client. Everyone in the conference room applauded. "Outstanding work, Peter. Congratulations, you've outdone yourself." Peter smiled politely. "Thank you." But for some reason, he couldn't concentrate. His phone rested face down on the table. Without knowing why, he suddenly picked it up. No missed calls, no messages. Still, a strange feeling settled in his chest. One of his coworkers noticed. "You okay?" Peter forced a smile. "Yeah, I don't know. I just have this feeling like something isn't right." His coworker laughed. "Maybe you just miss your wife." Peter smiled. That's probably it. But deep inside, the uneasy feeling refused to disappear. Back at home, Ima sat alone in the living room. The letter remained on the coffee table. She stared at it without blinking. Every few minutes, she picked it up, read a single line, then put it back down. The words refused to change. Her heart refused to accept them. She whispered to herself, "No, there has to be some mistake." She quickly grabbed her handbag, picked up the document, and hurried out of the house. 40 minutes later, she arrived outside a large hospital. The same hospital whose name appeared on the letter. Her heartbeat grew faster with every step. Inside, the bright white hallways felt cold and unfamiliar. She approached the reception desk. "Excuse me." The receptionist looked up kindly. "How can I help you?" Ima placed the letter on the counter. "I received this." The receptionist looked at the document, then at the computer screen. After a few moments, her expression changed. "I'm sorry. Please wait here. She disappeared through a nearby door. Aima's heart pounded louder with every passing second. A minute later, a middle-aged doctor walked toward her. Mrs. Brooks? Yes, I'm Dr. Harrison. Would you come with me? His voice was calm, but there was a seriousness in his eyes that frightened her. She followed him down a long hallway until they reached a quiet office. The doctor closed the door gently. Then he gestured toward a chair. Please sit down. Alma's hands shook as she sat. She could barely breathe. The doctor looked at the letter for a long moment before speaking. I'm afraid there has been an administrative mistake. Aima looked up instantly. What do you mean? The letter wasn't supposed to be mailed before we spoke to your husband personally. She frowned. What letter? The doctor took a slow breath. What you're holding contains the preliminary results of Peter's recent executive health screening. Aima blinked. Health screening? He never told me he had one. It was arranged through his company. Silence filled the room. The doctor continued carefully. We still need additional tests before we can confirm anything. Aima's voice trembled. So, what does this mean? The doctor lowered his eyes. It means we may have found something serious. Aima felt the room begin to spin. She gripped the edge of the chair to stop herself from falling. Her lips quivered. No, the doctor leaned forward gently. Please don't lose hope. Nothing has been confirmed yet. But until we know the truth, I strongly advise you not to tell Peter. A tear rolled down Aima's cheek. She nodded slowly. But inside, her entire world had begun to crumble. She left the hospital with the folded letter clutched tightly against her chest. Outside, the sky that had been bright all morning was now covered with dark gray clouds. The wind grew colder, as if nature itself knew a storm was coming. The drive home felt endless. Rain had started falling by the time Aima left the hospital. Tiny droplets raced across the windshield as she gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands. The doctor's words echoed in her mind over and over again. We may have found something serious. Nothing has been confirmed yet. Please don't tell Peter until we complete the tests. She wanted to believe it was all a mistake. She prayed it was. But no matter how hard she tried, fear had already found a place in her heart. When she reached home, she walked inside slowly, closed the front door, and leaned against it. The house was silent. Only yesterday it had been filled with laughter. Now, it felt strangely empty. She looked at the framed wedding photo hanging on the wall. Peter was smiling at her in the picture, holding her hand as they danced at their wedding reception. A tear escaped her eye. She gently touched the frame. I won't let anything happen to you, she whispered. I promise. That evening, Peter arrived home exactly at 7 o'clock. As promised, he walked through the front door carrying a bouquet of white lilies. Aima? No answer. He smiled. I'm home. Still nothing. He found her sitting quietly on the living room sofa, staring out the window as rain poured outside. She didn't even notice he had entered. Peter frowned. Hey, she quickly looked up and forced a smile. Oh, you're home. I am. He walked over and handed her the flowers. For you. She accepted them. They're beautiful. But her smile disappeared almost as quickly as it appeared. Peter noticed. Normally she would hug him. Today, she simply placed the flowers in a vase. Something wasn't right. During dinner, the silence became impossible to ignore. Usually, they talked about everything. Their day. Funny moments. Future plans. Random dreams. Tonight, only the sound of forks touching plates filled the room. Peter finally broke the silence. Did something happen today? Aima looked up. What? You've barely said 10 words. I'm just tired. You sure? She nodded without meeting his eyes. Peter didn't ask again, but worry settled deep inside him. Later that night, while Aima was washing the dishes, Peter quietly walked behind her. He wrapped his arms around her waist. Normally she would laugh. This time, she froze. Peter immediately let go. I'm sorry. No, She turned around quickly. It's not you. Then what is it? She hesitated. For a brief second, she almost told him everything. Almost instead, she smiled weakly. I've just had a stressful day. Peter searched her eyes. He knew her better than anyone. He could tell she was hiding something. But he also knew one thing. If Aima wasn't ready to talk, pushing her would only make things worse. So he simply kissed her forehead. I'm here. She nodded. I know. But inside, her heart broke. The next morning, Peter woke before sunrise. He found Aima sitting alone on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket. She was watching the sky slowly brighten. You couldn't sleep either? He asked gently. She smiled faintly. I guess not. He sat beside her. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Peter reached for her hand. You know, you can tell me anything. She squeezed his hand tightly. I know. Then why does it feel like you're carrying the whole world alone? Her eyes filled with tears. She quickly looked away before he noticed. I'm okay. Peter wasn't convinced, but he smiled anyway, if you say so. At work, Peter couldn't concentrate. He made mistakes he would never normally make. His colleague Ryan noticed immediately. That's the third drawing you've thrown away today. Peter sighed. I know. You and Aima okay? Peter looked surprised. How did you know? Ryan smiled. You've worked here for 5 years. The only time you lose focus is when something's bothering you at home. Peter leaned back in his chair. I think she's hiding something. Ryan frowned. Like what? I don't know. She's been distant, she barely smiles, and every time I ask, she says she's fine. Ryan stayed quiet for a moment. Then he spoke. Maybe she doesn't want you to fix it. Peter looked confused. What do you mean? Sometimes, the people we love don't need answers. They just need us to stay. Peter thought about those words for a long time. That afternoon, Alma returned to the hospital alone. She sat outside the doctor's office waiting for additional test appointments. Every second felt heavier than the last. A nurse approached her. Mrs. Brooks? She stood. The doctor will see you now. Inside the office, Dr. Harrison reviewed several reports. We've scheduled more tests for Peter. When? Tomorrow morning. Aima nodded. Does he know? Not yet. The doctor folded his hands. I think it's best if you bring him in without causing panic. She whispered, I'll try. As she left the hospital, she stopped inside the small chapel near the entrance. The room was quiet. Sunlight streamed through stained glass windows, filling the space with soft colors. Aima sat alone in the last row. She closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she cried without trying to hide it. Please, she whispered through her tears. If there's any pain left in this world, give it to me. But don't take him away from me. That evening, Peter decided to surprise her. He cooked dinner himself. The kitchen smelled of garlic butter, herbs, and freshly baked bread. When Aima walked inside, she looked genuinely surprised. You cooked? Peter smiled proudly. I only burned 1 piece of bread. She laughed softly. Only 1? Maybe 2. For the first time in days, a real smile appeared on her face. Peter felt relieved. During dinner, they laughed a little. Talked a little. It almost felt normal again. Almost. After dinner, Peter disappeared upstairs. A few minutes later, he returned carrying a small wooden box. I found this while cleaning. Aima smiled. Our memory box. Inside were photographs, movie tickets, postcards from vacations, handwritten notes, and tiny souvenirs collected throughout their marriage. Peter picked up an old photo. Remember this? Aima laughed through watery eyes. The camping trip. We got lost. You blamed the map. It was the map. You were holding it upside down. Peter burst into laughter. I still think the map was wrong. They spent hours looking through old memories. For a little while, the fear disappeared. The hospital. The letter. The unanswered questions. Everything faded. Only love remained. But late that night, As Peter slept peacefully beside her, Aima quietly got out of bed. She walked into the hallway carrying the hospital file. She opened the drawer beneath the hallway table and hid it carefully underneath old documents. She closed the drawer. Then she looked back toward the bedroom. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I have to protect you, even if it means carrying this burden alone." What Aima didn't know was that Peter had opened his eyes the moment she left the room. He hadn't heard what she said, but he had seen her hide something. His heart sank. He wasn't angry. He was afraid. Afraid that whatever she was hiding could change their lives forever. Outside, thunder echoed across the night sky. The storm had finally arrived. The storm raged throughout the night. Rain battered the windows while flashes of lightning illuminated the dark bedroom for a brief second before everything disappeared into darkness again. Peter lay awake. His eyes were open. But his thoughts were somewhere else. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had seen only a few hours earlier. Aima had hidden something. Not just anything. A file. And she had hidden it from him. For the first time since they had been married, Peter felt a wall growing between them. Not because he doubted Aima's love, but because he didn't understand her silence. The next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. Aima prepared breakfast as usual: pancakes, scrambled eggs, fresh orange juice. She forced a smile every time Peter looked at her. Peter smiled back. Both of them were pretending everything was normal. Both of them knew it wasn't. As Peter picked up his coffee mug, he noticed Aima's hands shaking slightly. He gently reached across the table and held her hand. "You're still worried?" She quickly pulled her hand back. "I'm fine." Peter lowered his eyes. "You've said those two words 100 times this week." "I'm fine. But they don't sound true anymore." Alma wanted to tell him everything. She wanted to place the hospital report in his hands and cry in his arms. But she remembered the doctor's warning. "Nothing has been confirmed yet. Please don't cause unnecessary panic." She swallowed the truth once again. "I promise, when the time is right, I'll tell you everything." Peter nodded quietly. "I'll wait," but deep inside, waiting had become harder than knowing. Later that afternoon, Aima received a call from the hospital. "The final test results are ready." Her heart skipped a beat. "We'd like both of you to come in tomorrow morning." Tomorrow, the answer would finally come. She thanked the receptionist and ended the call. For several minutes, she simply stood there, staring at her phone. Tomorrow, their entire future could change. That evening, Peter came home earlier than usual. He had made a decision. No more guessing, no more imagining. He would trust Aima. But fate had something else planned. As he walked into the living room, he noticed the hallway drawer wasn't fully closed. He smiled to himself. "Aima always reminds me to close drawers." He reached to push it shut. Then he noticed a familiar white envelope inside. His name was written across the front. Peter Brooks. His heartbeat slowed. He carefully pulled it out. It looked official. Hospital documents. For a long moment, he simply stared at it. His conscience whispered, "Don't open it." But another voice answered, "What if this is what she's been hiding?" His trembling fingers unfolded the papers. His eyes scanned the first page, then the second, then the doctor's notes. He stopped breathing. Possible abnormal findings, further investigation recommended, urgent follow-up required. Peter's hands began to shake. He sat down slowly on the hallway floor. Everything suddenly made sense. The sleepless nights, the fake smiles, the tears Aima tried to hide. She wasn't pushing him away. She was trying to protect him. At that exact moment, the front door opened. "Aima?" She stepped inside carrying grocery bags. The bags slipped from her hands. Apples rolled across the wooden floor. Peter was holding the file. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Only silence remained. Aima slowly walked toward him. "I was going to tell you." Peter looked up, His eyes were filled with tears. When, after the final results, you carried this alone? She nodded. I didn't want you to be scared. Peter stood up. His voice trembled. You think I wanted you to carry this by yourself? Tears streamed down Ima's face. I couldn't bear seeing you worried. Peter shook his head. Ima, we made a promise. He looked at him through blurred eyes. We said we'd face everything together. I know, I broke that promise. No. Peter gently took both of her hands. You were trying to protect me. And that's exactly why I love you even more. Ima broke down crying. Peter wrapped his arms around her. For the first time in days, neither of them tried to be strong. They simply cried together. Sometimes, love isn't about hiding pain. It's about sharing it. The next morning, they drove to the hospital together. Neither of them spoke during the journey. Peter reached across the center console and held Ima's hand. She held it tightly. Neither wanted to let go. When they arrived, Dr. Harrison welcomed them into his office. He looked at both of them with a calm expression. I know the past few days have been incredibly difficult. Peter nodded. We're ready. The doctor opened a new folder. The additional scans and blood tests have been completed. He paused. Ima held Peter's hand so tightly that her fingers turned pale. The room felt completely still. Then, the doctor smiled. I have good news. Both of them looked up at once. The abnormality we saw in the first scan is not cancer. Ima covered her mouth. Peter stared in disbelief. The doctor continued, it turned out to be a rare but completely treatable inflammatory condition. With medication and regular monitoring, you are expected to make a full recovery. For a moment, neither Peter nor Ima moved. Neither of them spoke. Then Ima burst into tears. This time, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Peter hugged her tightly. He closed his eyes and whispered, We're going home. Outside the hospital, the rain had stopped. The dark clouds slowly drifted away, revealing a bright blue sky. Sunlight warmed their faces. Peter looked at Ima. I have one request. She smiled through her tears. Anything. No more carrying burdens alone. She nodded. I promise. And you? Peter smiled. I promise that no matter how frightening life becomes, I'll be right beside you. They linked their fingers together and walked toward the parking lot. Neither of them realized life had given them a second chance. But fate still had one more surprise waiting for them. A surprise that would change their lives, not with fear this time, but with hope. The drive home from the hospital felt completely different from the drive there. Just a few hours earlier, the silence inside the car had been filled with fear. Now, it was filled with gratitude. Peter glanced at Ima and smiled. You know what? She looked at him. What? I think today is the first day of the rest of our lives. Ima smiled through happy tears. I think you're right. Peter reached over and held her hand. I told you I'd never let go. You kept your promise. And I always will. Over the next few weeks, life slowly returned to normal. Peter began taking his medication regularly. Every morning, Ima reminded him with a playful smile. Medicine first. Peter sighed dramatically. Yes, Dr. Ima. I'm not a doctor. You act like one. I'm your wife. Exactly, they both laughed. The fear that had once filled their home was slowly replaced by laughter again. Peter returned to work part-time while continuing his treatment. His colleagues welcomed him back with applause. Ryan hugged him tightly. We missed you. Peter smiled. I missed being here too. Then Ryan looked at him with a grin. And judging by that smile, I'm guessing your wife had something to do with your recovery. Peter laughed. Everything, one Saturday morning, Peter woke to an unusually quiet house. Ima? No answer. He checked the kitchen. Empty, the living room. Empty, then he noticed a note on the dining table. Gone out for a little while. Don't worry, I'll be back soon. Love you. Peter smiled. Now what are you planning? An hour later, Ima returned home carrying a small white paper bag. She looked nervous. Peter noticed immediately. Everything okay? She nodded. Can you sit with me? Of course. They sat together on the sofa where they had shared countless conversations. Ima placed the paper bag between them. I have something to tell you. Peter's smile slowly faded. What is it? She took a deep breath. You remember when you asked me to never hide anything from you again? I do. She nodded. So, I'm not hiding this. Her hands trembled as she reached into the bag. She pulled out a tiny pair of white baby shoes. Peter looked at them, then at her, then back at the shoes. His eyes widened. Ima, she smiled through tears, I'm pregnant. For a moment, Peter didn't move. He simply stared at her. Then tears filled his blue eyes. Really? She nodded. We're going to be parents. Peter laughed and cried at the same time. He gently wrapped his arms around her, holding her as though she were the most precious thing in the world. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything. I do. He placed both hands gently over her cheeks. Thank you. She smiled. For what? For giving me another reason to wake up every morning. 9 months later, the waiting room outside the delivery suite felt longer than any journey Peter had ever taken. He paced back and forth nervously. Every few seconds, he looked toward the delivery room doors. His hands wouldn't stop shaking. Ryan, who had come to support him, laughed softly. I've never seen you this nervous. Peter smiled weakly. I've designed skyscrapers. I've presented projects worth millions. But nothing has ever scared me like this. Just then, a nurse stepped out. Mr. Brooks? Peter almost ran toward her. Congratulations, you have a healthy baby girl. Peter's eyes instantly filled with tears. And your wife? They're both doing wonderfully. Peter quietly entered the room. Ima looked exhausted, but happier than he had ever seen her. She held a tiny baby wrapped in a soft pink blanket. Peter slowly walked closer. Can I? Ima nodded. He gently lifted his daughter into his arms. She was so small, so peaceful. Tiny fingers curled around one of his. At that exact moment, Peter cried. Not because he was sad, but because he had never felt so much love in a single heartbeat. Ima smiled. What should we name her? Peter looked at their daughter. Then at Ima. Hope, Ima smiled. Hope Brooks. I love it. Because that's what carried us through the darkest days. Peter nodded. And that's what she'll always remind us of. Years passed. Hope grew into a cheerful little girl with Ima's warm smile and Peter's bright blue eyes. Every evening, she would run to the front door the moment she heard Peter's car pull into the driveway. Daddy's home. Peter would lift her into the air while Ima watched from the porch, smiling. Their house wasn't the biggest. It wasn't the most luxurious. But it was filled with something far more valuable. Love. One quiet evening, after Hope had fallen asleep, Peter and Ima sat on the same balcony where they had shared pancakes years earlier. The sky was painted with shades of orange and pink as the sun slowly disappeared beyond the horizon. Peter reached for Ima's hand. Do you remember the question I asked you years ago? She smiled. If life ever became difficult, would you still choose me? Peter nodded. What would your answer be today? Alma looked into his eyes with the same love she had on the day they married. My answer hasn't changed. If I lived 1,000 different lives, I would search every city, cross every ocean, walk every road, just to find you, and in every single life, I would choose you again. Peter smiled, tears shining in his eyes. And I'd choose you too. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Sometimes people believe love is proven only during the happiest moments. But real love reveals itself during the hardest ones. It is choosing each other when fear enters the room. It is holding on when letting go feels easier. It is believing in tomorrow, even when today feels uncertain. Aima and Peter discovered that a perfect marriage isn't one without problems. A perfect marriage is two imperfect people who refuse to stop choosing each other. And as they watched the stars together, hand in hand, they knew one simple truth. Some promises are not made for a single day. Some promises are made for a lifetime.